Hello, I'm Senator Espaillat from the 31st Senatorial District.
And we are on a bus tour of parts of Pennsylvania where they have been fracking gas, and maybe you'd like to tell us why you thought this tour was important to have.
I think it's important to experience firsthand what goes on beyond, sort of like the debate and beyond what you read. It's important to come out here and see how folks, regular families are impacted by this practice. And I was really taken aback to see the level of it that's going on. It's just everywhere, next to schools, next to homes, next to creeks and ponds, parks. It's just everywhere, and it's a very aggressive practice. We see how many families have to rely on these water buffaloes, right, to have water, and every week they have to bring in X amount of gallons for their families of clean water. How it's impacting on the ecology, on the ponds, creeks, and how it's been placed even right next to schools. So it's ripped the community apart, because it's a poor community, and some of them are motivated by the crumbs that are thrown at them. But in fact, there's also great resistance for it. So this should be a great example of why we should not do this in New York State, and why the governor should say no to fracking, and why we should be really committed to developing a comprehensive plan towards the future for renewable and safe and clean energy for New York State and the country. We should be the leaders across the states. So I'm happy to have been here with a group of folks. I hope to communicate with everybody and get out of this some potential legislation that could be introduced this session addressing this particular issue.
You're as far as I know, the only legislator who has actually taken constituents to a fracking site so they could have a hands-on experience.
Well, we need to build a coalition across the state and across the United States. And this effort should not stay in our neighborhoods. We got to build a coalition with upstate, with the southern tier of the state that's being adversely impacted by this proposal. And that's the only way we're going to be able to win, if we build a diverse, very strong coalition. So there's no better way than doing that than actually having firsthand, one-to-one contact with the people that are impacted. So, people like Vera, who's clearly one of the most prominent leaders in this area against it. We should bring her to New York so we could hear from her, learn her organizing strategies. This is about organizing a community too. This is not just about the merits of the issue, but it's also about how do we organize the state against it.
Vera was a local resident in the counties that we visited that took us on a tour, gave us the background on the conflict within the community and the dangers already of what has happened with the poisoning of water and the land in some sections of the county. Where did you find Vera?
Well, we did the research, and we found that this was the place where we really needed to come. Gasland was filmed here. Is the place with the most disproportionate level of fracking of any place, and she stood out as one of the leaders. So we contacted her, and she was just tremendous in in showing us around and made us feel welcome in what could have been maybe some difficult areas, right? But she's a true leader, and I think a trailblazer in this effort, and we were happy to have made contact with her.
Your new district now extends down to 23rd Street, and in 23rd Street is very close to where the Spectra pipeline is coming in.
That's correct.
At 14th Street in Gainesville.
That's correct.
Yet none of the elected officials downtown, and some of them are your colleagues, Senator Duane, Richard Gottfried, Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, none of them have raised any voices of concern in the community. I live in that district. Do you have any idea why the elected officials are being so silent on this issue?
Well, I hope to have conversations with them, and I hope that very soon that there will be a position stated by all of them against it. And I've spoken to them on hydrofracking, and they are against it as well. They're progressives and they are against hydrofracking. But this is about again building a very diverse coalition. There's no reason why Northern Manhattan. I have the privilege to represent a very long and very narrow but very long district that stretches from the northern tip of Manhattan, Marble Hill, all the way down to 26th Street. So it has a bunch of neighborhoods and with diverse interests, diverse communities, religion, ethnicity, race, all of that. Income. So it's about connecting all of those neighborhoods. And making sure that everyone in Washington, whether you're in Washington Heights or you're down in Chelsea, you know what hydrofracking is about, and you know that it's a real danger. We share waterfront neighborhoods. How do we make the best use for the waterfront that's ecologically consistent with what we want our neighborhood to be? And I think working with those elected officials, we could eventually reach a consensus on what our position will be as representatives.
Why do you think the governor, who's a democratically elected governor, has been so silent or slow to move on the fracking issue?
I think that the governor, because he recognizes the kind of economic crisis that, let's say, the southern tier of the state is facing, he's almost pushed to accept this. But he ought to really come out here and see that, in fact, it hasn't had much of an impact economically, and that, in fact, there's a bunch of outsiders that come in and make money, and very little trickles down to the local economy, and it certainly has not created a buzz, an economic buzz in the neighborhood. In fact, what it's done is put a burden and stress on its infrastructure. The roads are in terrible shape because of the heavy equipment, and it's just overwhelming for communities like this one. So I would suspect that it will be equally overwhelming for the southern tier of the state, and it will not help bring it back. So why adopt it by thinking erroneously that it's going to be a shot of energy in the local economy?
The whole question of money and fracking. There's an enormous amount of profit to be made, and there's money being confidentially paid out to people who allow their land to be used for fracking. It's almost impossible to find out how much people are being paid. It's almost impossible to know what the profits are. How do you think the average citizen, the person who lives on 79th Street or 26th Street or 186th Street, can step up and ask questions that get answers? Because these questions seem to be, no one has an answer.
Absolutely. Well, there should be full disclosure of all those transactions. And certainly, we ought to know if for anything, for regulatory purposes, that what's being paid to people and what they're selling their land for when they meet these company heads. I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope that we don't have to go through an effort that we have to determine what are people selling their land for. I hope it just never happens, and we really move forward aggressively in developing a comprehensive plan for renewable energy across the state of New York.
Let's talk a little bit about New York City. Most people in New York City are not aware of how far advanced the fracking structure already is being put in place by Mayor Bloomberg. I'd like to talk specifically about...
The mayor just came out recently and officially endorsed hydrofracking. It doesn't surprise me. He's a businessman, a mega businessman, and a billionaire. So, I think that, I expected that position from him. But, the governor is a progressive governor, right? Or so he calls himself to be. And I know even though he's trying to be a centrist, things should be done on their merits. And clearly the merits, what I saw from this visit are that it should not be done because of the adversely negative impact that it has on local communities, smaller communities that can deal with heavy traffic, people whose water system is contaminated and they got to live with these water buffaloes. The ecology, how it's impacted adversely in dramatic ways, and how it just disrupts an entire and doesn't reap any. That community doesn't reap any major benefit from it. So, why do it? There's other ways of bringing back the state economically, and we should be considering those ways.
Most people do not know that the Bloomberg administration has mandated by 2015, I believe, that all boilers, residential and commercial, must be converted to natural gas or biodiesel. But the emphasis by the administration has been on natural gas conversion, which means there has to be a source of natural gas in the city. How do you feel about that, and how do you talk to your constituents who come to you?
I've had some real issues with that because I've run into co-op owners that have had difficulties in achieving that conversion. Is very costly, and many of them don't have, given the bad economic crisis impacting the real estate market, they don't have the ability to do that. So this is a bad idea at the wrong time.
The question of biodiesel, which is also an option, which doesn't seem to be on the table, or wind farms and alternative energy.
Those are all things that should be on the table, and there is no reason why we cannot scrutinize each of them and see where is the potential for New York State to be the leader, not to be a follower, either to be the leader in those energy forms. I think it's important that we engage it immediately, and the sooner we do it, the better off we'll be.
Do you know how the Speaker of the Assembly, Shelley Silver, has he taken a position on hydrofracking?
No, I don't know what his position is at this moment.
And the minority leader of the Senate?
I believe that the minority leader of the Senate is against hydrofracking, yes.
Is there one? I'm going to finish now because I'm going to let you go back to your bus ride. We don't get out of the city that often. Maybe you go to Albany a lot, but all this beautiful greenery here. But
Yeah,
I'd like to ask you if you could say one thing to your constituents about how they could become involved in the fight against hydrofracking. What would that be?
Write to Governor Cuomo first and foremost and let him know you're against fracking, that this is a make it or break it issue for you politically. I think it's important that he hears from all New Yorkers. But let's build a strong coalition between downstate and upstate. Very often people upstate feel that outsiders shouldn't dictate to them what to do. So let's engage them and build a coalition that could be a strong force in pushing back to kill the drill.
This weekend in Albany, there is a 3-day conference culminating with a rally tomorrow morning, which is upstate, downstate, trying to do the very thing you're just talking about. So hopefully we'll be moving forward.
Well, we planned this trip precisely because we know that it's happening. I unfortunately won't be able to be there, but I hope the message gets out there that a group of New Yorkers took their time to come to Marcellus Shell and see firsthand what's going on to families there, what's happening to families there, and the fact that we know now firsthand how important it is to stop this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.